What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So as the internet has been hoping beyond hope that there will be a Nintendo Direct at some point soon in the future, we talked about it on the podcast recently. If you missed it on Saturday night, you can go back and check that whole thing out. It was fun. But people are obviously hoping for a Nintendo Direct. Well, it looks like we're starting to see maybe some of the titles that could be announced for this year on the Switch, as we have now seen some ratings coming out of Korea, which generally means that those games will be getting announced or shown sometime soon. We'll go over what you can expect and what titles have been rated at this point. And we had a massive leak. This is a big deal because it's a game that was originally canceled and disappeared. That's Starcraft Ghosts. Well, it leaked online, and this is going to be a very interesting week because this just happened yesterday, and the internet is already going crazy over what is apparently a game canceled from back in the early 2000s is now being passed around for the first time online. As always, guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton, and if you're brand new here, hit that red subscribe button down below so you can stay up to date on all the gaming news going on in the gaming world. And we're going to start today with the Wii U, which... okay, sure, why not? Wii U. Look, I know a lot of people have probably put it away since the Switch has come out and it's been getting a lot of the Wii U ports, but there are some people who do still use it for things like Netflix, because this story today actually reminded me that the Switch still does not have Netflix, which is still just odd, because it has Hulu, but it still doesn't have Netflix. Anyway, the Wii U, people have been using Netflix through its browser, and it looks like now that is going to be discontinued sometime soon. Go Nintendo actually had the story after a reader by the name of Alien Boy VA tipped them off that when opening it, it says that it will be discontinued soon. Basically, support will be ending, and not surprising. I mean, why would you, I guess, continue to support a system that most people have moved on from and didn't really sell too well in the first place? But again, it does still kind of bring up the idea that the Switch doesn't have Netflix yet, and people were actually using the Wii U to watch Netflix, even if maybe they had a Switch. It is odd, because that is a pretty convenient way, I guess, for some people to do it. I know a lot of people do use Hulu on their Switch. It's convenient, I get it. It's there, you're already playing a game, maybe you want to switch over to watching a TV show or a movie. Yeah, that makes sense to me. So strange that Netflix isn't there yet, but on the Wii U, it's going away through the browser, it seems. Also, we've talked about one of the benefits for Nintendo's online service is where they will basically give away a game similar to what Games with Gold does or what we've seen with PlayStation Plus. However, Nintendo will give away a game for a week. It's like a trial period, and then you can decide if you want to buy and have your information, your save data carry over. They did that with Mario Tennis Aces, and now, from what I can tell, this is the first time we've seen it with like a full-on third-party game. Not like a game like Tetris 99 that like launched free to on the Nintendo Online service or anything, nothing like that. I'm talking about like a third-party game that had been sold previously and now becoming free technically on their online service. This is Dead Cells. This was announced last night on Nintendo Japan's website, and it looks like it's going to be running from the 24th of February to the 1st of March, so an entire week, and people can check out and play Dead Cells, which is a great game. I think most people should check that game out, and it is interesting to see Nintendo go out and get a third-party game to put on their online service as a free-to-try game. I mean, I guess you can play... Dead Cells is a game you run through multiple times trying to get to the end, and you get a little bit stronger generally, or a little bit more knowledge on how to navigate kind of their setup, their boards, but still, third-party games kind of getting thrown into the mix now. It makes you wonder what else could be thrown in there, although it's been a while since we had Mario Tennis Aces, and we still don't know, at least as of this recording, if this is going to be making its way anywhere else in the world or if there's a Japan-only thing. Oh, I wanted to also point out that we did the story on what was going on with the PlayStation 5, specifically from Bloomberg with Takashi Machizuki, who reported that they were struggling with the pricing, where it was coming in at $450, and we are kind of expecting a $500 PlayStation 5. One of the things that was pointed out, and it was kind of lost a little bit in there because there's so much information, is that it appears that Sony is going to be investing a bit more money than you'd expect into the heatsink or the cooling solution for the PlayStation 5, which is good if you have a PlayStation 4 that, again, sounds like it's going to take off, it just straight up fly out of your room, right? Because it gets so loud and the fan just starts blowing air out of the back of it. This seems like something Sony has heard themselves, and if they're going to invest more money than you would expect into the heatsink, we're talking possibly up to triple the amount of money in terms of parts into it. Could mean a few things. We know that the Series X is built the way that it is to accommodate the amount of raw power in the system, and they have to be able to cool it. So maybe Sony is investing in a more complicated, more lavish cooling system to keep it more of a box, but just something to think about going forward. And whenever we see the PS5, we'll find out what what the shape is, and maybe we'll be able to gather a bit more information about where this money is going exactly for this heatsink. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start with these leaked Switch titles through the Korean ratings board. Now, generally, you will see these pop up, and these companies have to pay to get these ratings done. They don't just go and pay to have these rated for fun. Usually that means that something is going to come from it. And we've seen this before. We saw Metro Redux. Remember, we pointed those out directly as being rated, and then wouldn't you know it, it gets announced. So to see, well, that's just that's the most recent one. We've seen it multiple times even before that, but to see it now, several different ones alongside of, remember we talked about that Mortal Kombat Classics collection that we heard about that could be showing up. We've also heard about several retail listings for things like Biomutant on the Switch, and we saw the BioShock collection also rated for the Switch. Well, now we have 2 more titles to add to the list, and we're going to be talking about Catherine Full Body, and we're also going to be talking a little bit about XCOM 2. XCOM 2 that is actually a pretty cool game, I think, to bring over to the Switch. The first one, I believe, is on cell phones, so this series has been on like mobile architecture before, but the second one would be new, and I like the idea of XCOM 2, the XCOM 2 collection coming over, because we had a game similar to XCOM and Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle, and that was a great game. I really enjoyed that, but it drew so many comparisons to XCOM, and I know that one sold because Mario was on the front, but I'm hoping that people who enjoyed that game we'll take a look at XCOM, because XCOM is what that was based on, and it is a great game. Now, I do know XCOM 2 also had some issues on PC when it came to frame rate, and it would beat up the CPU really bad, and even on consoles like the PS4 and the Xbox One, it does beat those systems up pretty bad as well. So that will actually be pretty cool to see running on the Switch and how they make all of that work, optimize it and all of that, because we've seen some games recently like Alien Isolation actually look and even run a little bit better on the Switch just because of the amount of time between the ports that took place, and newer methods and techniques for optimization have kind of come up. So we'll see about that one. Should be interesting. But Catherine Full Body is going to be the game that a lot of people focus on because it's from Atlas, and this was a game that was on the Vita in Japan. Didn't seem to make it over on the Vita. I wonder why. The Vita got pretty much killed off by Sony, right? They didn't want to do much with it. And it seems like Atlas was left at a bit of a crossroads here, and they said, well, you know what? We'll put it on the Switch, and that's how we'll bring it out everywhere, right? We'll do it that way, and that appears to be what's happening, and it is almost, it's making people wonder if Atlas is almost looking at this and saying, you know what? We do kind of need that other system. We don't have the Vita anymore. Does that mean that you see a Persona 5 of some kind come over? Maybe. I mean, it's not very surprising for me to see Catherine Full Body come over because I thought it would have. I was a bit surprised it wasn't announced sooner, but I guess they wanted people to import it on the Vita or even buy it in Japan on the Vita. If it launched as PS4, Vita, and Switch all at the same time, I don't think the Vita version would have sold that much because most people would have grabbed it on the Switch. But I mean, it appears to be coming over, and it appears that maybe Atlas is looking at that Switch a bit more, and we saw that survey go out recently. Maybe they have some other games in mind, and we'll see when this gets announced. Again, there have been obvious rumors and stuff about people talking about a direct of some kind coming up in the future. Sure, these could be a bit of a list of some games coming up, or they could just throw them out on Twitter, right? But so far, it looks like they're building a pretty good lineup for 2020, and we're learning about all of this, it seems, mostly through the ratings board and a few through retail listings. Next up, let's talk about Starcraft Ghosts. This came out of nowhere. This popped up online yesterday, as it looks like this person here on Twitter, you can see, started just posting screenshots. This is from Andrew Borman, although they did go on in the thread to say that that was not from them. That was from people who were anonymously posting on different Xbox modification forums and boards saying, hey, look, Starcraft Ghosts. Remember that game that was supposed to have been canceled back in 2005, 2006? It was planned for the GameCube, the PS2, and the Xbox. It went through a bunch of delays. Several different developers took a shot at it, and it kind of just fizzled out and eventually just disappeared. Now, it looks like it's resurfaced by being found on a dev kit, an Xbox dev kit. Which, I mean, yeah, I guess that's where it would have been left, right? It would have been kind of just left on a development kit that maybe gets scrapped or recycled or thrown up on like an estate sale or something when these studios either move or go out of business or dissolve. And it looks like it ended up in the correct hands this time because they looked through it and found Starcraft Ghosts. And what did they do? Apparently they put it online because people are now downloading this game online and checking it out. There are several YouTube videos popping up. I'm not really interested in showing footage here because I don't know how Activision Blizzard is going to react to this. there's a strong possibility that they go around and start just ripping videos down, because I mean, technically I guess it's their property, and I guess they could do that. There's a lot of legal gray areas in there, and this might be something they just don't want out there, because after watching it, it looks pretty bad. Now, of course, it's probably not finished or anywhere near being finished. It is an interesting piece of history because it was Starcraft Ghosts. It was a game from the Starcraft universe about to go over to consoles back during the GameCube, PS2, and Xbox era, and it was a bit of a different take on the universe, but I do see why it was canceled. Now, I don't know if anyone will come out and say, hey, this is where it came from, or I'm the one who leaked it. It just seems it's very anonymous right now, being thrown around, and I get that with Activision Blizzard and how they can be when it comes to this stuff, but go check it out sooner rather than later, because there's a chance that all this stuff gets purged. I'm not really sure where your people are downloading it from, but I guess you could go out and find it there. One person used a modded Xbox 360 to load it up and were able to play a few levels, although some of the levels also looked super broken and wouldn't even load. So it's kind of hit and miss depending on what you try to load up, but really cool to see this just randomly pop up online yesterday. Next up, let's talk about the Sonic movie, because while it is getting kind of knocked down on Metacritic, people really seem to like the movie. And I mean, they changed the character, the model itself, and hey, I gotta give Sonic fans credit, or just moviegoers credit, who said they wanted a different design. They actually went out and they delivered, because this is now the best selling, the best grossing, and at least in its first weekend at the box office for a video game adaptation, actually beating out Detective Pikachu. Detective Pikachu had $54 million in the US its first weekend at the box office. The Sonic movie, $57 million. This is pretty impressive. In fact, over that weekend, this past weekend, it actually grossed over $100 million worldwide at all the box offices. That's pretty big, right? I mean, that's Sonic coming out of nowhere and taking over the movie theater, being number one pretty easily, actually, over the weekend. I did not see this one coming. I don't think most people did, especially with the timeline of events where they showed a really bad-looking Sonic, let's be honest about it, and they changed it. They delayed the entire movie into the following year till now. It was supposed to have come out last November, right? So months of a delay to make it right, and it worked. People are really excited about Sonic again. This is strange. The last time I remember people being this excited about Sonic outside of just a video game was like the early 90s, when there was Sonic everything, cartoons, comic books, it's all over the place, TV shows, and it's cool. It's really neat to see this happen for Sonic. The only issue I have is Sega doesn't seem to have been ready for this. Sega should have had a game, like a really good game. Isn't that crazy, by the way? There's a chance that they do something weird like Sonic Forces 2 and it comes out and it's worse than the movie, or received poorly compared to the movie. I hope they have Sonic Mania 2 ready. That would be great, but it is odd that there is no Sonic game ready to go around the movie from Sega. It just seems kind of off, but hey, the Sonic movie, good for them, everyone there. Awesome to see that all of that came out right. I hope the animators get a good bonus, because they seem to have put in quite a bit of time to get this done on time, and the great success there. It looks like there's also the possibility of a sequel, and based on these sales and the reception, I wouldn't be shocked if we see a couple more Sonic movies going forward. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about a Game of the Year award. This is from the DICE Awards. It was Untitled Goose Game, right? Isn't that crazy? Untitled Goose Game won Game of the Year from the DICE Awards. It was shocking to me too. I know. I mean, it's great to see. It's okay. Look, it's Untitled Goose Game. It's fun. I get it. But there were some big games that would have been up against. But they put this tweet out here. You can see it. It says, and the DICE Awards Game of the Year goes to Untitled Goose Game Honk. I just wanted to put that up there so you could see it, because there are probably people who wouldn't have believed me otherwise. But hey, great for Untitled Goose Game to get that award. Good for House. Awesome to see them win that. Look, it's a unique game. I get it's not the highest quality game of the year compared to some other ones, and is a bit shorter, but I did like the concept. I thought it was fun, and you know what? I'm glad House has received the success for this game, because I feel like they're going to try something even crazier in the next game, and I look forward to that. I don't think they're going to do like Untitled Goose Game 2 or anything like that. They could branch out and try something really weird, even more weird than Untitled Goose Game. I'm looking forward to that, because it's always good to see creativity in video games being celebrated like this. So hey, good for House, Untitled Goose Game. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. It says, this is from Rye H saying, seeing that prototype makes me wonder what Sony and Nintendo would be like today had that partnership went through. Also, the what if Nintendo used CD-ROMs for the N64 in an alternate universe, Nintendo may have kept going down the power/tech route. Now, I do question what would have happened with the N64 using CDs. I think that would have been a fascinating system to see and what it could have done without the limitation of cartridges. But then, of course, you have load times, and that was apparently a really big issue for Nintendo at the time. Load times, no one would sit around and wait, and then here's the PlayStation 1 selling like crazy and getting some of the best games of that generation, specifically best RPGs of that generation by far. But the idea of Nintendo and PlayStation, or Nintendo and Sony working together on that Super Nintendo PlayStation, I don't think it would have been that different for the outcome, mostly because Sony was doing that partnership, in hopes of also then getting into video games on their own. What Nintendo did mostly just gave them a kick in the butt, and they just ran full force with it then. It would have been more of a gradual, I think, entry for Sony then, but Nintendo didn't like the deal that I don't know how it got this far, because the idea here is that Sony would have completely controlled that entire CD format, that Super CD. It would have been all controlled by Sony. Nintendo would not have done anything with it, and that means they would have not had licensing control over games that could have been released on their system through that Super CD attachment, royalties, all that. It didn't make much sense for Nintendo, and I have no idea how they got that far in negotiations, to the point where Sony announced it, and then Nintendo announced literally the next day on stage that they were going with Philips instead. Strange stuff there, yeah. But I think at the end of the day, we still would have arrived where we are now, but we might be with like a PlayStation 3 right now instead of a PlayStation 5 coming up, because Sony would have taken their time getting into the market. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. Enjoyed this video, guys? Hit the like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about today, whether there's these different games just pretty much being put out there, just leaked by the Korean ratings board. What do you think about Catherine from Atlas going to the Switch after it was just on the PlayStation and the Vita, and all of a sudden here it comes over to the Switch? I think Atlas is kind of exploring this a bit more, especially after that survey with a ton of games listed there, including those Personas. Then also, what'd you think about the Sonic movie if you saw it? I'm curious. And what do you think this means for Sega going forward with Sonic? You think maybe they put out like a big budget game pushing him even harder because this movie worked out? And then Starcraft Ghosts. Were you around when this was being passed around back in the early 2000s? What do you think about it now being leaked out about, 18 years later? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.